This happened in 2015 to one of the science teachers at my high school. We'll call her is Miss Ballet. Miss Ballet was one of the science teachers at the school, and since she had her baby sometime in October of 2014, she was on maternity leave, and of course this took place in the summer of 2015. She announced her day that she was going to be coming back to her work sometime I'm in the next year, or the next school year, people say. But this random scary thing happened to her was honestly the most confusing one yet. She always keeps her doors and windows locked, and she's never seen any shady or weird people by her place. Of course, she's seen some shady and weird people, but that's just a different story. Miss Ballet was putting her son to bed when she heard noise coming from downstairs. Honestly, she thought that her husband was home, as he does work out, but of course, that was on certain days at night. Normally, he worked out at the gym when he wasn't at work. Miss Ballet goes downstairs to the kitchen to absolutely see that no one was there. She thought that she might have been hearing things, as this has been happening for a few months now. She went over to the front door to see that there was a shadowy figure of a person. It was standing only a few feet away. Shocked by the expression of what it was, it didn't see her, so she went upstairs, locked herself in the baby's room, and called the cops. As soon as she called the police, she waited what seemed to be a while. And as soon as she waited, she could hear the sound of someone opening up the door and running out. This was honestly confusing as to how did this person even get in her house? How did this person even find their house in the first place? This honestly was confusing her to the extent as she's never seen them before. However, when the cops arrived, they discovered that the front door was open. And when they opened the door, whoever it was ran out. And it was honestly the most confusing act of whatever it seemed to be. They couldn't identify the person, or the figure, or even its facial features. But when Miss Ballet was found by the cops in the baby's room, they said that this person ran out of the house for some reason. They ran out of the front and the cops tried to stop it, but it was already gone by the time they arrived. And they soon found out that the house was already opened at the front door. The cops even did a thorough sweep around the house in case if there were any clues. But they came up with nothing, as they said that they couldn't find anyone in the house, and that they have no idea who or what was there. This honestly was very surprising, as this has never happened to Miss Ballet before. But whoever it was must have somehow got in the house and somehow escaped when they had the chance. Nothing was stolen, thankfully. But if Miss Ballet didn't discover this person in her house that night, that chances are this person could have slit her throat at night when she was sleeping, or do something God knows what. This is why Miss Ballet gets paranoid, and she checks the house every night before going to bed, to make sure that all the doors and windows are locked, and checked at every place, just to make sure no one was inside. This took place to one of my neighbors when they were living in Iowa at the time. Now, my neighbor, will call him Harry, as he was pretty much in his late 30s at the time. He moved to Canada when he was 42, as he and his wife had wanted to start over after there some really messed up verbal altercation with a couple neighbors that they were living at the time. When they were living in Iowa, they ended up discovering something really messed up. Now, Harry was home from work as he had the day off, and he was just cleaning up the place, and he was looking after one of his dogs, which his name was Marshall. Marshall was a pretty good Dalmatian, and he was about maybe 5 years old. Marshall had been raised as a small puppy, as they raised Dalmatians at the time. Harry and Marshall were just going through some old dog stuff, some toys, as when they were starting to pack up as much as they can because they were going to have a yard sale that weekend. So this was somewhere, I guess, in 2017 or 2018. I can't honestly remember, as when Harry told me this, his memory gets really fuzzy. So I'm doing the best I can to explain and express the story. While Harry was doing his usual, cleaning up, Marshall started barking what seemed to be the back door. Harry went over there to see what he was barking at and thought that maybe he saw a squirrel and was barking. But he didn't see anybody, and he thought that Marshall might have saw another creature. Of course, they occasionally get squirrels and other animals, so that's what Harry thought. When Harry was going to make a lunch, he all of a sudden heard what seemed to be someone breaking the window, what seemed to be a crowbar or something. Marshall started barking aggressively, followed by a man yelling and screaming. When Harry walked in, he saw that Marshall was biting the arm of a man, who unfortunately dropped his crowbar. He tried to get it, but his main focus was Marshall biting his teeth against the man. How was this during the daytime and that anyone was breaking in? Well, when Harry and his wife were living in Iowa, they lived in a really dangerous area where a lot of crime took place if you're not careful. Of course, Harry saw the crowbar and took it, and eventually knocked the man out. As soon as he was knocked out, the cops were called and the man was arrested. Harry's mother eventually heard the news, as she lived only a few blocks down, said that the man had tried to break in her house last week. But eventually, it seems that this man had been wanted for assault and stealing jewelry and etc. This man apparently was wanted in Nevada and Indiana. Eventually, he was caught thanks to Harry, who somehow called the cops after knocking the man out. Harry's wife showed up and was horrified at the news, and they honestly ended up getting a security system for their doors, as they wouldn't be lasting longer out at the House of Iowa. Since they were going to be moving to Canada soon, they made sure all the windows were boarded up, mainly only because the windows were due to be replaced, so they boarded up the windows until the window people came and put new windows there, even replacing the broken window that the intruder tried to get in. If it wasn't for Marshall who saved Harry, then this man could have pretty much ended Harry's life. This happened to one of my friends when he was 15 years old, and at the sake of the story, we'll call him Jason. Now, this took place sometime in 2013, and Jason was about 15 years old. Jason was left home alone one night when this happened. Most of the time, he was mainly left by himself, with no one to, interfere with his alone time. Since it was 2013, it might have been sometime in the spring, probably April and May. Jason was left home alone as both his parents started working the night shifts and overtimes, mainly because they were short staffed at the hospital, which it wasn't no surprise to Jason. When Jason was home alone, he normally played video games, watched TV, sometimes he would text on his phone, and etc. He knew certain rules that his parents put down. Don't go outside, I'd only text if you're going to go somewhere. Also, make sure all doors are locked, don't let any stranger people in, etc. Now, while Jason was left home alone on the first night when his parents were doing overtime shifts, he ended up seeing that there was a strange man lurking around the property. At first, he thought that it might have been just a random person, maybe just a homeless guy or something. But this guy started coming over to Jason's house more frequently. And now Jason was starting to get a little bit more weirded out. He didn't know what the hell this guy was doing or why he was sitting there going over and around places, but this man seemed to be really creepy. He was older than him, but he seemed to be maybe in his early 40s by the looks of it. Jason honestly thought that maybe he was just maybe some creepy weird dude, so he brushed him off. He kept coming home a few times to seeing some traces of him being around. This man sometimes would leave cigarette butts on the ground and etc. Of course, Jason's parents were honestly starting to get confused as to why this man was coming around, as they never seen him before. But the only time he seemed to be coming around was when Jason was home alone. Of course, this was one night that Jason almost died. While Jason's parents were out of town, they were only going to this work company event. Jason was home alone and he was about to order pizza. When he was ordering pizza, he looked outside to see the man wandering around the property again. He thought that this man might have been, just some weirdo looking for something amusing to do. Jason had thoughts of calling out the man, telling him to leave the property, but he didn't seem to be fazed by anything, even though Jason did ask him if he needed anything and etc. Of course, this prompted the things to get escalating when Jason said, "Get out of my property or I call the cops." As soon as he shut the door, the man suddenly ran up at the door and started banging loudly. Jason honestly dialed the police, and he was praying to God that this thing wouldn't break in. He broke into the house by somehow smashing one of the windows. And as soon as the man was there, Jason could see that he was carrying a large axe, and he seemed to be smiling, as if he never smiled before. Jason ended up screaming, but just as soon as the man was about to charge at him, suddenly there were sirens in the distance. The man got away, and of course, Jason was not allowed to be home alone very much after this incident, as his parents got the call. But however, the same man showed up again, fast forward to 2015. Now Jason was 17 at the time, and this man had broke into his house when Jason got home from school one of these days. It might have been maybe somewhere on the last day of school before exams. When Jason got into the house, he could see that his room was completely trashed. There were garbage, furniture turned over, broken glass, etc. The cops were even there, as well as Jason's parents, and Jason was questioned by the cops for at least a good hour before leaving. Jason's parents had said that same man had somehow returned and destroyed pretty much almost everything in the house. Nothing was stolen from anyone, thankfully. But Jason was never for the same since. Mainly because whenever he thinks about this night, he gets paranoia that someone was gonna break into this house. His parents eventually got strong security cameras and security codes and etc. after this incident. And that man, he was either put in jail or he somehow is gone. Jason has never seen him since, and he still wonder if this man was still out there. But of course Jason did not want to know if this man was still out there or not, and he personally do not want to find out. So fast forward to maybe about 2019, he actually heard from his parents that this same man came back again, but this time he tried to invade someone else's house just about a few blocks away from where they lived. Now, the man officially got caught and he was sentenced to jail for a long time. Still to this day, Jason has no idea what this man would have done to him if he had not called the police, and or if he has not even seen him. Now this happened to one of my friends, which we'll call her Rachel. Rachel was in her mid-20s when this happened, and this took place sometime in 2014. Her parents were in British Columbia for at least a few weeks. Now, this was during the summer, so things were extremely hot. However, Rachel, being 25, was by herself in her place. She had her own car to drive to places, but she mainly hanged around her place whenever she had nothing to do. She was on her laptop basically looking at applying for certain courses in university since she got accepted into the university she wanted to go to. Suddenly she looked up to hear what seemed to be someone screaming. She thought that it could have been someone outside, probably just messing around. Mostly just teenagers trying to pull pranks and that. And they have a lot of obnoxious teens that like to do stuff like this. However, Rachel ignored it and continued on with her laptop. Suddenly she ended up looking outside the window to see someone that she's never seen before walking in. Whatever this person was definitely had something that was honestly horrifying. This person was someone that they have never seen before, and she was honestly confused as to why this person was even around. At first, Rachel thought that maybe it was just someone maybe new to the place, but she ended up closing the door and ended up continuing her work. Suddenly, she decided that she wanted to go and get something to eat, so she decided to head to McDonald's. But as soon as she was about to head out, however, she could hear what seemed to be someone screaming. She thought that it could have been some hysterical person reacting to a spider. She ended up going over and walking down the steps to see that there was someone there. Someone was on the steps having a knife in hand, and he didn't seem to notice her. But she could see that there was a body, what seemed to be a young woman, no older than 14. This was a young kid, and Rachel honestly felt that she was going to be sick. She honestly had no idea why this man did it, so she carefully walked back up to her bedroom, or what seemed to be her apartment, locked the door, and called the cops. She waited for the cops to pick up, and they eventually did. They told Rachel instructions on making sure everything was locked. Rachel did so, and she waited and waited for a while, thinking and praying to God that the cops hurry up. As she was waiting, whatever was going on, she heard noises coming from outside. Someone was banging on her door, and she honestly felt that this door was going to give in, and this thing, or whoever it was going to get in. She honestly had a feeling that someone was going to break in, and one of these days would come. She has been a very paranoid person, and she waited what seemed to be a while. Eventually, the security guards came and tackled the man. There was few by some screams and even some cries from men battling this, whatever this man is. Eventually the cops came and they took the body and found out that the young girl, age 14, was stabbed. It was someone that Rachel has never known, as she has never been an acquaintance at all with Rachel. This story is the reason why Rachel gets paranoid whenever she's home alone.